and we're here with A Better Way Athletics. I'm going to be your host today, Heath Esslinger, and I am excited. Our purpose with A Better Way Athletics is to help restore the joy of sport for parents, coaches, and ultimately those athletes whom we say we care so much about. And I am joined today with a guest that is running alongside us, even ahead of us, but I love it because the more people we have in this space, then the better off we are and the more positive change we can bring about. Nick Buonocore from the Reformed Sport Parent. If you do not follow him on Twitter, go to Twitter right now. Give him a follow. Go to Facebook. If you're still on Facebook, if you're a little bit of the older generation like me, go to Facebook, follow him on Facebook. He produces great content, has interviews with some unbelievable coaches from across the country, and I believe it will help you as a coach, as a parent, or even as an athlete. So, Nick, man, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for being on here with us.
Man, you got to start like announcing it like some events. I'm like charged that one run through the wall right now. You got me excited.
Let's go, man. Let's go. So tell me a little bit. I mean, obviously you were in a similar space as us with A Better Way Athletics. I mean, a lot of people say, hey, are you fearful? Listen, the more people we have in this space, the better. It's like if you see a Lowe's very close, you see a Home Depot. If you see one car dealership, you see other car dealerships, because I call that traction. And so listen, we're in this together. We're creating traction together so that we can create some positive change. So tell us a little bit about the Reformed Sports Parent, where that started and what you're doing.
So I started, well, thank you very much for having me on, Heath. It's been great to connect with you through this whole process. And so it quite frankly, it started because I'm a father. I have 6 kids. My oldest will be a sophomore in high school. My youngest is what is he? He's going to be 2. He's going to be 2 in August. Sorry, man. I forget sometimes. But so coaching, right? I played 4 years of college baseball. I played a year professionally, and which doesn't matter. But I felt like I played at a fairly decent level. So I was like, I had some experience. And then your kids start playing, and I kept hearing these things over the last like decade, and it didn't matter which sport it was. I kept hearing things like, and I played at a Division III school. Now, I went to a Division III school. Fortunately for us at the time, it was the best program in the country, won a Division III national title. So I always kind of had, but in baseball, if you're fortunate enough to play in summer leagues over the summer, you can play with Division I. Doesn't matter divisions. So
Coach, can I call a timeout right here? I want to give you a plug, because Coach is always talking about the importance of viewing all those levels.
Sure.
And listen, I was fortunate. I got to be a Division I coach, a Division I athlete. Mainly, I wouldn't even say Division I athlete. I was a wrestler. I lacked some athleticism. I never made the all-star baseball team. I couldn't have played Division 12 baseball. But here's what, for the parents out there that are listening, hey man, like, take a deep breath. Sometimes your child's greatest experience may be at one of those lower levels. So I just want to give Coach a plug. He talks about it a lot. I come from a different side. I was a Division I, but so many times we shortchange like Division II, Division III, NAI. You may have your greatest experience there. Let it happen if that's what it's supposed to be. So go, baseball player, you're a parent.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, the reason I bring that up a lot is because I felt like there's a lot of times you mentioned anything lower than D1, it's like, oh God, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I played in the summers against those D1 guys, a lot of guys that went to the big leagues. Anyway, so when my kids were playing sports, I kept hearing things like D1 or bust, or and I kept hearing like conversations at like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old events about college scholarships. And like, you got to do this year round in order for your kid to even have a chance. And I was just like, what are you people talking about? Number one, where are you hearing this from? Who's telling you this? And it just kind of built from there. And I kept seeing things like, and I speak a lot about baseball because that's my previous experience. And I'll circle into wrestling real quick, is I started seeing in baseball where, this is rec leagues, kids are walking around with $2,000 worth of equipment on their back. I mean, like, and to play in some of these travel leagues, it's $3,000, $4,000. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, I wouldn't have been able to play that growing up. Then my boy started wrestling. And I never wrestled a day in my life, but I instantaneously fell in love with it for one reason. Number one, I felt like it was the first time that I, as a parent, had a platform to teach my kids to be accountable for something where they couldn't make an excuse, if that makes any sense. Baseball, oftentimes, it's, well, the coach put you here, or the ball bounced this way, or instead, like, my son got pinned. It was like, dude, what did you do? What happened? I felt as a parent, it was a great way to teach my kids accountability. So I fell in love with it for that reason. And anyway, so fast forward, I saw these things like the culture, something's weird going on in youth sports. I reached out to my former coaches who are still coaching in collegiate and professional baseball. I'm like, is something weird going on? Like, I feel it. And they kind of all said to me, yeah. And we went into it. And then, I don't know what happened, but I just started like interviewing them. And clearly the stuff I was talking about, people were feeling. And that's when I realized, like, wow, there's an issue out there. People are interested. There's something that doesn't feel right. And that's how you and I connected.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we've seen as well as we do parent education and stuff. People will say, well, parents don't want to hear this. Here's what we've seen, Coach. They may not want to hear it on the front end, but after they hear it, they're almost liberated.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you're meaning to tell me I don't have to do it that way in order for my kid to be successful. And to me, that's what one of our missions is. We want to set people free. Like, you don't have to be in bondage to these things. These things were supposed to be fun and enjoyable.
Well, what I want to say is, like, one of the things, so being in that culture of like intense pressure, it's almost like, I forgot the reason the name Reformed is there. It's like for about a season or two, I kind of got bought into it, right? I'm like, and more importantly, from a coaching aspect of it, I started coaching and this is where it started happening. So because I had felt like I had a little pedigree, which amongst most people, like you, if you have a little experience playing, you do a little bit. So my teams would be good and, yada, yada. And I started feeling myself like, God, I'm a really good coach. My kids are 8, 9, 10, but I'm like, my ego is involved. And I was like, man, this isn't normal either. And then what happened from that is I started having those car rides with my kids, my boy, my oldest, especially, ball goes between his legs, he strikes out, whatever. And I remember once, I'm not proud of it, but I'll never forget telling the poor kid I wasn't proud of him. Like, I told him, like, you didn't play very well. And he's sitting there like eating a chicken patty sandwich, like having a good time. And I'm telling, here's this knucklehead dad concerned about a 1-run loss in a 7U game, whatever the age is, I don't remember. But that's when I realized that there's something weird going on because I got sucked into it.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think we have to be careful of, and I say that, you always want to deal with the root of the issue. And I think that's what you're trying to get to as well. Like, we can deal with symptoms all day long, but like, you can give me Tylenol for a headache, but if I have cancer, I'm going to die just taking Tylenol. I need the tumor removed, or I need chemo. And so one of the things that I've seen, and I don't know that you've seen this as well, is like, because people ask me, Heath, what do you think the root issue is? It's not even that we worship sport. Coach, here's what I really think is happening in our world today that was not present 40 or 50 years ago. We've actually come to this place where we worship our children. Like, the adult family, like, their whole life revolves around that 7-year-old. Like, the family was not designed to revolve around a 7-year-old. Now, is the 7-year-old of utmost importance? Are we 100% committed to them? Are we going to train them up in the way they should go? Yes. But like, dude, I'm 43 years old. My 8-year-old don't run our life. Like, I'm the father. My wife is the mother. We're going to set the direction. Now, we sprinkle in opportunities, but I'm not going to alter my whole life. But what happens is the sport world sucks you in. And even as a guy with a pedigree, you saw yourself getting sucked in,
Dude, 100%. And you start basing your life around it. And then fortunately, went through some changes. So for me personally, I in order for me to understand, I had to it almost felt like I needed to hit a bottom. Like, you have to look at yourself and go, wow, something's not right. And I realized there was this pedestal. Like, I realized at some point, anything that I felt like I did not accomplish or I had unfinished business with, I felt like I was forcing it on my children through athletics. And it was really bizarre. And it happens quick. And then you're almost, so much has been revealed through this process. Like, we're softening the word. So I was brought up, fortunately, in a situation where my mom told me it was either go to college or you're going to pay us rent if you're going to live here. You're out of here after, like, one way or the other, you're gonzo. So to me, it's like, I'm preparing my kids to be self-sufficient. And if I keep them, allowing them to not feel any discomfort or any opportunity to take care of themselves, and I just see that reflected in sports. It's like, what's the quote? Let's prepare the path for the kid instead of preparing the kid for the past.
Yes.
And
yeah.
It's easy to fall into.
Yeah. And it's, you know, we say the sport world teaches all these things, but the way that we're doing it now at the youth level, the sports world's not teaching anything because we're giving them everything and we're micromanaging everything. And so one thing you said, and I want to point this out for everyone that listens to this podcast, the three words you said that were so important, all right, for all of our listeners out there, all right, you said I had to look at myself. You know, you began to look at yourself. We live in a world, I am guilty, where we look at everyone else. It's the league's fault. It's the coach's fault. It's our kids' fault. It's it. Listen, the starting point for change is when you look in the mirror, and as ugly as it seems, you get really honest with yourself. I've been there, done that. So kudos to you for self-examining.
Well, for me, it didn't happen because I had this spiritual awakening. I had a spiritual awakening, or I had a little bit of awakening because I went through a divorce. You know, I'm remarried now. This was, and I, you know, everything was exposed, and it forced me to take a look at my life, my character. What was my part in it? You know, I loved for years. I thought I was just this great guy who, you know, oh man, but then you look back and like, where did I go wrong? And you realize, like, every time I pointed a finger at somebody, I had three more pointing, you know, back at me. And I just was able to look at my life and say, dadgum, man, I have not been doing this right. And it really became revealed to me when we were going through the divorce, Heath, and I'll never forget it. And you could tell my kids at the time, I think were 8 and 9, you know, and God, you know, everything's moved on and we're fine. And my ex and I have a good relationship. Anyway, besides the point, I remember my son, he was clearly upset. And I said, Tyler, his name's Tyler. I said, Tyler, how you doing? You know? And he wasn't talking, and I could tell he was hurting, and he didn't want to cry. You know why? Because for the last 8 years or 9 years of his life, I'm the knucklehead dad telling him, put your chest out. Men don't cry. We don't show weakness. And that's not true. That's not true. And those things that happened made me realize I didn't realize any of this stuff till I did get vulnerable, but I was not allowing my kid to get vulnerable because I didn't know how to. So it's through that pain that I don't want to say I was awakened to it, but it's kind of led me to this position, if that makes any sense.
Hey, man, unfortunately, pain is a great teacher. And you know, our goal, both of our goals through our organizations, everything we say is don't let the pain get so deep that there's really bad consequences before you make changes. Even as a parent navigating the sport journey, don't get to 15 and your kid is so bitter at you and they're so over this. Like, manage this appropriately. And it starts with perspective. And you've been interviewing a ton of people, man. Like, I mean, I love listening to those interviews and hearing those clips. Again, if you're not following Coach on Twitter, go to the Reformed Sport Parent, follow him on Twitter. You know, but all these interviews you've done.
Yeah.
What's maybe one or two things like that are thematic, like they're very common as you interview coaches at the highest level? And let me preface it with this. For everyone listening, 95% aren't going to play at the highest level. So that's okay. My brother is a pediatric dentist who owns 11 offices now, I think. I was just on his $150,000 boat last night. I chose Division I wrestling. My wife said she married the wrong Esslinger. Okay. She got the muscles. I've lost them all. My sister-in-law got the money. My brother's crushing it. So just because your kid doesn't choose athletics doesn't mean they're not going to be successful. So we're talking to high level coaches, but that doesn't mean your kid has to do it. Just make sure you're allowing them to be high level at something. And so, but what's one of the themes in all this that you've gained?
So I'm trying. Okay. So there's a few different themes. And I'll tell you this, now that you just brought that up, and yes, I have talked an amazing amount, and I've talked to every level. Right. And what I've noticed is across the board, the coaches don't force anything on their kids. It's like whatever they want to do, their own kids. Like, I let them walk their own path, right? Yeah. So number one. But two, what comes up a lot is I try to find out information that we can share with people to kind of debunk some of these myths that are out there that people are paying thousands of dollars for. I would say the biggest thing that comes up most often is the word compete, the word competition. And that has many tentacles to it. And I'll give you an example. It started with my very first interview with Jim Calhoun. Jim Calhoun coached UConn. He's a Hall of Fame basketball coach. He said, Nick, there's so many basketball games being played now, you know, AAU type things. He goes, but it's almost like the scoreboard doesn't even matter. Kids are out there strictly to showcase. And I can't. There's something to be said about fighting through and being willing to compete to win as a team, and fighting through that competition. And I hear that across the board. The willingness to compete in anything seems to be something that comes up quite a bit. And overall, so that's one bucket, the word compete, competition.
Okay,
And
let's revisit that in just a minute. Go to your second one.
I would say the next one is Trent Dilfer nailed it, because Trent Dilfer, Super Bowl winning quarterback, said, talent, right? Talent, all that stuff. But he goes, then you have your stuff bucket, your character, your integrity, your this, that, and the other. Those things can lift up talent, whereas talent, if you're just talented, that only take you so far. So it's all those things that you can't measure with go run a 40 or go bench press this. All those things have so much value across the board, and it gets talked about a lot, but I don't think people understand how serious it is. I mean, you got to be talented to a certain degree to play at the college level, but though that stuff bucket, the character and all those that makeup of the person, not a coach I've talked to or an athlete where that's not a major impact. And of course, grades.
And I love that term. You call it the stuff bucket. I call those long.
Trent Dilfer said that, not me.
Okay. All right. I call those long haul attributes. And here's what we know of. And so parents, if you're listening, little league coaches, if you're listening, like, get out a pen and paper. Here's the deal. Long haul attributes, the stuff bucket, those things that matter most. Here's the beauty of it. They cross all boundaries and they stand the test of time. So here's the deal. So people ask me with my parents, I'm like, here's what my parents, they did a great job in the stuff bucket. And here's what it did. My brother chose the academic route, became a pediatric dentist, and it worked for him. I chose the athletic route, the stuff bucket, produced in that realm too. And so here's the beauty of the stuff bucket. It will cross all boundaries and it will stand the test of time. Talent will not stand. At some point you get to a room, everyone's talented. You've heard me say it before. Like, listen, kids today have gifts and skills because we've invested so much time there that get them to a room that their character won't allow them to stay. And character is in the stuff bucket. And so we've got to make sure that we have a plan. Like, parents have a plan to improve their kids' hitting. Do you have a plan to improve his thankfulness? Do you have a plan to improve his kindness? Do you have a plan to improve their responsibility? Are they resilient? You know what I mean? Can they handle the tough things, even at, the microscopic level of 7? So dude, that's a great term, stuff bucket.
So you just said something else. So Dilfer, he's been on ESPN for years and whatever, but he goes, it's one thing, because we'll get into this subject, I'm sure later, is, the multi-sport thing, and he coaches quarterbacks, and he goes, listen, I tell these quarterbacks that I coach, because he runs a camp for the last decade, where he goes, these are the kids that are being conditioned and trained to go on and get the Division I scholarships. He goes, but I tell the parents, I tell those kids, you're a great white right now, but if you go to the next level, you're going to be a room filled with great whites. You have to learn how to be a minnow. You have to be able to swim in multiple pools, because, being a minnow, like what he's described as, go be the sixth man on the basketball team. Like, go do something you're uncomfortable with to learn what it is to be in another role, a serving role, as opposed to always in the big dog leadership role.
Yeah, man. And so one of my philosophies there too is, and what we can talk about the multi-sport later. We may save that one for a whole nother one, but I'm really big on kids having a job. We live in a society today where, because kids are playing sports so much, and it ain't like they're training 9 hours a day. You know what I mean? Like, they're playing Fortnite 7 hours a day. But so kids today, you talked about that word serving. And so they don't have a job. And here's the thing about sport. Listen, I try to think I'm a humble person and it was about the team. But at the end of the day, sport was, I wanted to be good, man.
Yeah, of course.
About me. The thing about when you get Chick-fil-A does it better than anyone, man. They bring in these teenagers that no one else can get to act the right way. And they set a vision and they have a purpose, and all of a sudden they're working in unison and they're in the hot, the cold, whatever. I believe kids today are getting robbed of the opportunity to have a job and learn some responsibility outside the boundaries of sport. I learned a lot. People ask me all the time, where'd you learn to work hard? My dad owned a construction company. My uncle owned one, and we both had farms. From the time I was 9 years old, dude, we worked. You know what I mean? And so like wrestling practice was hard, but dude, I had done a lot of hard things. You know what I mean? And so it was relative. And so some kids now, like, I mean, the hardest thing they've ever done is go to baseball practice and they act like it's hard. I'm like, dude, if you think that's hard, never get married and never have children because you're hosed. Like, you're not going to make it. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. I'm dealing with that all the time. And it's funny, my in-laws are here. They're moving down here from Cleveland, Ohio. So my mother-in-law, father are staying here. My dad's very handy. And he just built like a little temporary deck on our back for our young kids to put like one of those small baby pool. Anyway, so my oldest son loves we've been talking about it. He helped him build it. And he's like, I want to try to find a job. And we've been encouraging. So my wife and I but my wife's a teacher, teaches elementary school. And we are huge believers in that. The tough part is, like we now, especially the last few months where the kids weren't in school. So what we do is if they're not playing a sport, they're not studying. And fortunately, all of our, they do very well in school. They work hard. We make them, and I'll never kid. Like we make them go running. Like go. You're running. Like if you don't have practice, you're going to, because if we let them, they'll sit on their tail. Yes. Like they won't go to the park on their own for 3 hours by themselves. So we make them do that. And it's almost like, all right, you want to get phone time or you want to play video games? Well, you empty all the garbages, like do chores to earn that. Doesn't make any sense. We almost pay with electronics for them to do work. Like give them the idea they have to earn it.
It's so easy, even for us as adults. And I'm guilty, man. I got a plank in my own eye. Like we can just waste a lot of time and accomplish nothing. So I'm a big believer that even if your kid could be an elite level athlete, allow him to do some things outside of his normal routine or outside. That's why, so we talked about multisport earlier and listen, I'm kind of skewed because, we use the research of, look at the highest level. All these people played multiple sports. I'm like, dude, they played multiple sports because they were freaks. They all ran track, but they never went to track practice. They could just win the 40, you know what I mean? Or the 100. And so I am a fan of multiple sport, but I'm also a fan of just multi-activity.
100%.
And so like it may not be football, wrestling, and baseball. It may be wrestling, you're into mountain biking and you kayak. It may be, I'm a big believer in just be well-rounded. You know what I mean?
100%. And it's funny. Part of me with hammering that, number one, that's like a hot button topic, number one. And it gets discussion. Part of a lot of what I want to do is get discussion started. Mm-hmm. And I've done it. I have had the conversations with the doctors and with the surgeons and with those people who say, so let me tell you, this. So if we say, and this is what happens. We say multi-sport's the way to go. Or people, the doctors, instead of it wasn't year round. Year round was causing the Tommy John surgeries in baseball. So about to play multiple sports. So what happens? Parents sign their kids up to play multiple sports in the same flipping season. So now they're playing. Gosh,
dude, it's out of control. Yeah.
So what it comes down to, like Mike Reynolds, he worked for Dr. James Andrews. Yep. Mike Reynolds is a PT, worked for the Red Sox for a long time. And he said, overuse is the problem.
That's it.
It's year round. So if you love baseball, love wrestling, but you got to take a break and you got to go mountain bike, do something to not hurt yourself. I mean, it's kind of common sense, but you get overzealous parents and it's like, well, and I see it a lot at wrestling. Well, my kid's got to go win the 90-pound state championship, whatever. He's 110 now. Well, we're going to cut weight. I mean, I went to Super 32. I see these kids. I'm like, oh my God. Like, and a lot of them want to do it, but how many kids really want to kind of, it's, I don't know. You tell me. It's your feel.
Well, and we've talked a little bit. I don't care if my kid wants to do it. They're 11. They don't call the shots. You know what I mean? Like, And so to me as a parent, like, so people ask me, like, I don't really let my kids start sports till middle school. I had a daughter last year on the 9th grade varsity volleyball team that made it to the state championship. I have another daughter who didn't start playing soccer, never touched a ball till the 6th grade, started in every 8th grade game as a 6th grader at a school of 1,700 kids. But here's why. She knew how to run, change directions, and she was hungry, man. And so here's the thing that for the parents out there that are listening to us two crazy dudes, like, are so passionate about this stuff. Here's what I believe. Keep your kid hungry. And here's how you keep your kid hungry. You don't let them have snacks all the time. You take food away. And so
Hold them back a little bit.
yes,
Yeah.
in the sports world, here's what we
Yeah.
do. And
Damn
even
right.
you talked about the word compete. All right. And so here's what we've even done with competition. It's competition, but it's like snack, 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 snack. And it's so much, it never means anything. So the Olympics were every 4 years. Dude, when you showed up for the Olympics back in the ancient days, dude, you were hungry to compete because you had prepared for 4 years and you wanted to put it on the line. Well, now we have a kid who plays 11 competitions, whether it be baseball, wrestling, volleyball, soccer in one weekend. I'm like, dude, you can't be at your best 11 times a weekend. I truly believe you only have about 20 best performances a year. You know what I mean? So pick them wisely.
And Tim Corbin, who's the head coach of Vanderbilt, who's
Rock
widely
star.
regarded. Yeah. I was fortunate to talk to him. He goes, Nick, we take the baseball away from our guys. Like they're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. Like we shut them down because not only gets to a point where they're physically potentially wearing out, but mentally, like you just said.
Yes, it's emotion. Like I even go to these sporting events. My kids are in sports. Now we have boundaries, all right, predetermined boundaries. And the thing is, like you watch these events take place over a weekend, and then you hear the parents start to talk. Well, man, the girls just don't seem to be into it. I'm like, they've played 9 games. You wouldn't be into it either. They're actually bored out of their mind. You know what I mean? So like, when you compete every weekend, 10 times a weekend, at some point, competition isn't competition. It's just going through the motions. So then you have a coach at the highest level who says, listen, man, I just want someone who competes. Well, you learn to compete by preparing well.
Mm-hmm.
And when you prepare well and you get a chance, it means something. Competition doesn't mean anything anymore because we do it so often.
And that's unfortunate. You got me just thinking about nowadays. And again, I hate to be one of these people. I really don't like to be one of those. When I was coming up, I stood on,
yes, I'm with you.
I don't like that. But I will say that often. Here's what. All right, now that bring it to this. I dislike how often people point fingers at the younger generations, and I think it's the biggest load of crap in the world. And because they're not learning it on their own, they're learning it from us.
Right, it's modeled.
I was told, and I'm not going to use his name, by a coach, and I thought he killed it when he said it to me. He was an ACC baseball coach, a former teammate of mine. He goes, Nick, our generation took what was more or less free to us and figured out how to make a fortune doing it.
No,
that's kind of what we're dealing with. So and then we go, I guess those kids are soft. I hate this. The kids are soft these days. Like, what does that even mean? Like, did we have the same things? I don't know. I can't tell you if I would be. Well, wasn't a big video game guy, but maybe I would be now. I don't know.
Absolutely.
So, and then the other thing that bothers me is, you go to wrestling tournaments, basketball, it doesn't matter the sport, and you get the overzealous. One of my favorite things about being an athlete growing up as a young kid is you get there and you get to have conversations with your buddies about the stuff that you want to talk about with no parents around.
Yes.
As a kid. And nowadays I think about, go to a baseball field a mile from here and look at a field, and you got fathers and mothers right up on the fence, being hawks, it's sniffing at everything they do, talking to them. And I'm like, now we wonder why kids want headphones on and they want to talk to their friends in peace. That's because that's their platform to do it.
Yeah, that's so true. And they don't learn to have real healthy conversations because we're always butting in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're always
and I know you talk about that, interfering. And I totally, that's okay. So that's another thing that comes up all the time, a parental over involvement.
Yes. And here's the thing for all the parents out there, like in no way, shape, or form do I believe, like, because people will say, well, the parents are crazy. I don't think that. I just think we have such a desire to try to do what's best for our kids. Even some ways, like we make up for what we didn't get too much in the lives of our kids, where
I'm guilty of that. Yeah, I was guilty of that.
Yeah, me too. It almost becomes detrimental. And so everything is about balance. Abandonment, I'm a Tim Elmore fan. Abandonment is dangerous, okay? You don't want to abandon your children. Abundance can be equally as dangerous. And so one of the things we preach a lot, and I know it backs your mission, is, listen, as a parent, your job is not to provide all the best opportunities. All right. It's to discern what are the right opportunities. Like every now and then be on a crappy team, man. Like so I'm not letting my kids start wrestling until later. Here's why. I'm a wrestling coach. I have access to high level wrestling. I'm getting ready to go to a camp when we get off here. I mean, my son would be good simply because of where he lives and who he lives with. I mean, relatively good. Now, he may not be great. He's going to win a ton of matches. Well, what happens is he starts thinking he's good and he doesn't know how to take the butt whippings that are going to come later. And so I'm a big believer in starting a kid at an age where they have to struggle a little, because if you start wrestling at 6, you're going to win most of the time until you're about 10 or 11 or 12. Well, then the playing field sometimes gets level and those kids don't know how to manage that struggle. And so I like to throw them in the stream when there's a little struggle involved. So like, listen, I know my kid's going to enter at 10, 11 years old. He'll get his tail whipped a little, but if he can learn to manage that and overcome it, then he has a chance to be great later. And so you really have to just pick like, and you know, what do you want the end to look like? Quit worrying about the beginning. What do you want the end to look like? And it may not even include sports.
My oldest son, right, is genetically or he's my adopted son, but he's my wife's nephew. Okay, if that makes any sense. My wife adopted him because, you know, his parents are in and out of prison. The dad in a prison, and he's got a bunch of kids, and they were in the system, and you know, he was literally living in inner city, you know, Cleveland. And the family, my wife, when she was 25, you know, fought for him to get him and got him, and has had him since. So he has his family all around. Anyway, so funny story. Little kid, you know, he's a shorter guy, but excessively athletic. I mean, my wife was a college soccer player. Her dad was not the tallest people, but her dad was a Division III All-American swimmer, just very athletic. They're the type of people when they're working out and they feel pain, like they go harder. I'm the type of person where I'm working out and I feel pain and I stop. You know, that's the difference. So he's has all that makeup, extremely explosive. She brought him, he was too crazy when she got him. When I say crazy, off the walls, he had no discipline his whole life. When he was 5, she brought him to soccer. He was knocking everyone over and taking the ball from him. So she brought him to football. Littlest kid on the field, but I swear to, and I was coaching him at the time. He was the kid that would go up against the biggest kid, knock the kid's head off, and get up. His helmet would be twisted to the side and going, all right, coach, let's go again. So all he wanted to do was please, 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 because he had none of that growing up. Anyway, was terrible at baseball because he had no skill, never had any exposure to that stuff, like the throwing motions, nothing, but was just always athletic, extremely fast, extremely strong. So fast forward a few years, you know, I get divorced, and about a few years after that, my wife now was single and we started dating. Anyway, I encouraged her. I just started signing my son up for wrestling. I said, listen, let me bring Avery to wrestling. He has, I think his skill set, you drop him in a wrestling, I don't know anything about wrestling, but it's got to be, he's explosive. I bring him in there. I don't know how to describe it other than it's probably like, I think he found his place. He didn't win every match, but he was 10, almost 11.
Yeah.
Had all that early success, all that. But I mean, he went to Super 32. He once, and he got just outside of placing, like the match. Anyway, after only 2 years of doing it with good instruction, not mind you, a good coach here, thankfully, he's hungry. It was the first time he felt like, oh my God, like success, because he never really had to, and he flourished in it. He was hungry for it once more. But as some kids have been doing it their whole life, he's just starting to like ramp up a little bit, and there's still so much upside. Anyway, the point is, there's something to be said about hammering back that long-term development, holding them back, keeping them, if they are engaged in athletic movements, because I think once they find their place, everything comes together. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. And I think there's this between 12 and 15 years old, there's this place where everything intersects, and you see some kids, because of experience, whatever, begin to move upward and some begin to move downward. And like, I just think we have to protect against too much too early. I tell parents all the time, I'm like, listen, fill their stuff bucket in a way that at 14, if they choose to be great at wrestling, they have the tools to do it. If they choose to become valedictorian, they have the tools to do it. If they choose to become an entrepreneur, they have the tools to do it. But your job between 6 and 12, and I really think, and I'm a little bit, I'm very faith-based, and I think, we've gotten enamored between 6 and 12 so much with sport and stuff that it's robbed us of time spent filling their stuff bucket. And so now at 13, here's what I'm going to tell you. The research will show, if you start trying to fill their stuff bucket at 13, you've missed the boat. And so, not that you don't try to make up ground because of past mistakes, but as a parent, from 6 to 12 is the age where their stuff bucket it's absorbent. At 14, your kids don't want to listen to you. That's okay. You've already stuffed their bucket. At some point, what's in the bucket comes up.
Yeah.
And so you've got to make sure you're not so busy playing T-ball that you're not filling their stuff bucket.
Which, as a baseball player, I got to tell you, and I don't want to speak for anybody, I think T-ball is the single-handed greatest waste of time in athletics ever in the history of life.
Hey, Nick, true story.
Sorry.
You know all my theories. Just last week, so we have a principal here in town. Great guy. Was actually played on state championship baseball team when I was in high school. I was in the stands watching. I told you early. I wasn't a good athlete, but this guy hit the winning little dink over second base to win the state championship. 1994. I remember it like it was yesterday. And so his kids are my kids' age. So he calls me about 3 weeks ago. He says, Heath, I know all your theories. I've been asking Carson to play for 2 years. Here's what I'm telling you. You can miss practice whenever you want. All right. We're just we're just going to have fun. It's going to be like scrimmages. And he goes, it's only a month long because of the coronavirus. Just let him play. No joke. Here's what I told my wife. My wife loves baseball. All right. She wished I would have been a baseball player. But here's the deal. She would like you. So here's the deal.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's the deal. This is what I tell my wife. We're spending zero money. All right. And we will miss practice if we have something to do. We're not going to let it hold us hostage. And so I put it on Facebook. Need cleats, need glove. I've spent $0. Yet there are people at this age, 8 years old.
Oh, forget it.
I'm like, why would I buy him a brand new bat? He can't hit. I don't care what bat I buy him.
Dude, because it's not anyway. I could spend all day talking because I'll tell you why. It's like buying a Lexus versus a Toyota. It's not about the kid. It's about look at how nice my kid looks, because that justifies me being. It somehow ties my worth as a parent to that.
I know, man. And it's a trap. Don't do it. You're a great parent.
I've done it.
Here's the measurement of a great parent. Are you filling their stuff bucket? Are you creating long haul attributes? And even with liberation statement here, even when you do that, your kids are still going to struggle at times. But trust, my boss always tells me, trust the seed. But you better make sure you're planting the right seed.
Quick story. So my son, he was at the arguably one of the best public school wrestling programs in North Carolina. Now, I'm not going to get into North Carolina wrestling is different than Pennsylvania and Ohio. I get it. Yeah.
But there's a lot of studs there.
There's good wrestling. Anyway, and I'm not saying this to be braggadocious. It is what it is. At 95% of the programs, probably around, my kids this year would have been the 106-pounder. Just so happens there's a sophomore on his team who went 51-0 as the state champ. Now, why is this a bit? And the kid's an amazing kid, been wrestling a long time, very good wrestler. Anyway, make a long story short, so what you do is in wrestling, as you know, you can call out. So he would wrestle, he would call out somebody else, the 113 kid, or whatever. And there were several times he'd wrestle to beat that kid and get in the starting lineup as a freshman. Point I'm making is there were times he was like, man, God, I cannot tell you how many parents, not here at the school or anything, but have told him, why don't you pull him out, bring him somewhere else? Right. And I'm thinking to myself, first of all, from what I gather, just from an athletic standpoint, a wrestling standpoint, being in that room and not starting is the best thing for him because he has a great partner. He's going to push him to get better. And two, how much value are we putting on sports if I pull him out of a school that he's happy in, he's succeeding in? Or I got this one. Hold him back a year. Why are you sending him there his freshman year? And I'm going, he's a freaking honor roll student. But who cares? Just homeschool him. And I'm going, what? Like, that's the type. And to me, maybe I'm the idiot. To me, that's irrational. I don't know.
Listen, it is irrational. But the mainstream says it's rational now. And that's where Folks, again, I'm telling you, go to Twitter, go to Facebook, follow the Reformed Sport Parent. I'd love for you to follow us, A Better Way Athletics. We want to help. You are not in this alone, okay? You're not in this alone. We want to come alongside you, and I need people to come alongside me at times.
Heck yeah.
Help me see, and to help me not get so consumed with what matters now that I lose sight of what matters most. The reason you would move your kid in that moment is because you're so fixated on that moment that it becomes more important than anything else in your life. And that is a bad lesson to teach our children. And so,
and think about, he was up, it didn't happen too often, but he'd be like, golly. And it's almost like, as a parent, I think it's normal to want to take away that discomfort. But I think, while it might be a short-term fix, it's a long-term negative, right?
Oh man, we'll do a whole nother podcast on that one. But
sure.
Dude, here's what I want to say. We're at about 45 minutes now. To all our listeners out there, man, again, go to Facebook, go to Twitter, follow the Reformed Sport Parent. Anything else they can do to follow you, Coach?
I'm on Instagram, same thing. And I'm going to be, there's things going on behind the scenes to kind of roll out the platform even more. So just hang tight. I'll keep everyone posted on social media.
Okay. Well, man, thanks so much this has not worked to me, man. This is absolutely a blast, and I learn and get better every time I'm with you. So from A Better Way Athletics, man, thanks for coming on today. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for what you do. Hopefully, I'm sure at some point we're going to team together, and
heck yeah.
We're gonna make a difference. So to all our listeners out there, I hope the one thing you got out of this today is you're not alone, and you don't have to do it the way everyone else is doing it. Man, do what's best for your family. Do what's best for your child long term. To steal from Coach Dilfer, man, fill that stuff bucket with the long haul attributes that can help your child be successful in anything they do at any point in their life. And if you do that, man, you're going to have a great relationship for your child for a really, really long time. And you're going to get to watch them do some unbelievable things in this journey we call life. So thanks for joining us today as we seek to restore the joy of sport for parents, coaches, and athletes.